Hi, folks. Let's take a diversion from coding today and talk about some of the philosophical ideas behind taking work at software companies. And one of the questions that might have come to your mind is that what kind of software company should you be working for? So, with that, let's go over what kind of companies there are. And so, first thing we have to understand is that there are big companies. So, for example, it's highly likely that you end up working for big companies. So, big companies are, I would say, I would call them by the market capitalization. So, that's like your Fortune 500 type companies where you have, I would say, something like their you would say market cap of greater than 10 billion uh, dollars, and so that I would call as something like big companies. Now what happens in big companies is that as the companies grow, their face, what I mean to say is their attributes start changing, and they become more and more process focused, and they are, you would say, very politically correct. And why I say that is because in these kind of companies, you might feel a little bit stifled, like as if your voice is being muffled. You cannot say what you want to say because these companies have huge HR operations, HR and legal operations, and the very conscious image their image and do not want to get sued because you see why they don't want to get sued. They have a lot of money and they know that people are coming after them. It's not their fault that because of their size and their operations, their revenues, their profits, the lawyers want to come to them. You give them a chance. They do not want to give anybody a chance to sue them. For example, very simple things, which could be just not even be like taken seriously in a startup. These companies would actually pay a lot of weightage to that, and that could be as simple as two people to the way you talk to people and the way you might if you want to like confront people. Like some companies, when you are in a startup, they actually love people who are confrontational because they need energy, they need passion in like what you do. So they actually do not want people who are like wishy-washy and neutral and just do their work like some kind of a slave, and just do your thing and get the heck out, get your whatever the heck you want. I mean, whatever they can actually give you. And also, as far as compensation is concerned, now that's a very interesting topic for these companies. Now, compensation, let's go to compensation. So, now here what happens is mostly they would not be able to give you a lot of money. Now, I may be wrong here because sometimes these companies like FANG companies, they usually do give you a lot of remuneration. But what is the problem there? They will not be able to give you lots of stock options. Now, why they don't give a lot of stock options? because company has matured and the Wall Street doesn't like freebies. They actually, I mean, they like freebies, but they don't want to give freebies. So they do not want to give they do not like companies that have a lot of employee ownership, because that means company is it might seem little bit weird that they do not like companies where employees own most of the company, but unfortunately that's how it is, because Wall Street wants to own everything at the end of the day, and they just want to own people as cheap as possible. So these companies would like to give you RSUs. And the work, let's come to the work environment in a lot of these companies. Now, work environment might be sweatshop in some of these. Like for example, especially if it is some kind of a hybrid between a startup and big companies. So even if it is a big company and they have billions of dollars in revenues, it might very well be that it portrays itself as some kind of a very daring and very innovative company. In that case, what happens is you end up working like a sweatshop. And I guess the best example, I do not want to take anybody's names, but there's a company here which is known for its social media operations, where I've seen a lot of sweat shopping going on. And the reason why that happens is, and I've also seen that in many other companies, is especially in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, I would say most of the companies are basically run by sweatshop kind of operations. And the reason is, in these companies, the US is a very competitive culture, and Wall Street is basically very competitive, because you got to be beating estimates every quarter. How do you beat estimates every quarter? By basically promising moon to the investors. And how do you deliver moon? So you can actually promise moon to everybody, but to deliver moon, you need people who will work their asses off on weekends and things like that. And that is one of the reasons why these companies tend to also prefer H1Bs, because they do not have much choice in terms of being able to speak their mind and things like that. So basically that's how the environment can be. Now, on the other hand, there could be non-software Fortune 500 companies where okay, so that I said, one thing I want to tell you is, in a lot of these companies, there's a lot of sweatshop culture, but at the same time, it could also be the other side of the coin is that you get paid for your effort. Now, I can tell you other Fortune 500 companies where there's no sweatshop, like you just work your 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, not much passion or anything. But then, even if you work on weekend, you get nothing. Basically, you would be considered a loser to go to work on the weekend, because it's like nobody is there. Like, why you're putting so much time? You're not going to get if you take the compensation, you're not going to go into the in the total market. If you take all the compensations available in the market, you would be lucky to even be in the 50 percentile. You would probably in the lower, like 10 or 20% of all the range. So of the compensation, I don't mean the in in a single company. So that is how the big companies go. Now let's take another culture, which is the culture of the startups. Now here, now startups itself can be kind of divided many in many ways. Like for example, it could be a very small startup where the product is not even out, even it's like alpha stage or something. I would say less than 15 employees, like 10 to 15 employees. Now these are very small startups, and sometimes working in these companies can be very interesting, because it's very full of passion. You get to say like what you want. They're not worried about getting sued because they don't have much money. And they tend to hire the people who are really into software, really into coding. and you will not find a lot of dead beats in these companies, and a lot of this people tend to hire for just for the sake of increasing. Maybe let's just say, just to give you an example, even though I'm all for diversity, but imagine you hire somebody just to increase diversity. Like there's no correlation to how much they can perform or anything like that. So in that case, I would say that startups can be a very interesting, these very small startups. Now you will get compensation wise, you would see that you might get lots of stock options, so upside is huge. But uh, be aware that 95% of startups fail. So it's like your stock market analogy, if you take, it's like investing in a startup or an IPO. Like you could be the next Tesla, you could be the next Google, or you could be, most likely you will lose your money. So if that is how you want to live your life, go for it. So that's your very small startup. Other cases where the company is probably already medium kind of startup, where the company is already in beta stage, product is out, something like that. The product is out or in the market already, and number of people, number of employees might be like something like around, I would say around 50 to 100 or something like that. So these are your medium startups, and the funding, they could be already at series A or B, series B, let's just say, or C or something like that. Maybe they might have raised like already hundreds of millions of dollars, that kind of companies. Where, by the way, in the very small startup, you might see that they might only be angel funded, or maybe funded, maybe at max, maybe like series A at best. So that would be the characteristic of medium startups. Now, in medium startups, you might see the atmosphere is more like big companies. It's kind of getting in the middle of very small startup and the very big companies, because you do have sometimes a lot of choice in what you want to do and how you want to basically manage yourself and how you behave. But it's still, the processes start to like creep in. The scale is getting bigger, so a lot of attention is being paid to the processes, documentation, and less time being spent in the pure development phase. So and then you have large startups, something like, let's say, your favorite house vacation rental company nowadays, for example, that big. So they're kind of big. They, you could call them. Some of them are like emerging unicorn, as they call them. More than $1 billion valuation. Now these companies can be in stages where you get to, it can be, actually they kind of vary, but some of them kind of getting very conservative, and some of them could be still operating in startup mode, and the atmosphere might be very tumultuous, very noisy, very turbulent, and you might see that people behaving like one of those, the bro culture, they say. And the bro culture actually is more, I would say, pertinent to startups A, which is very small startups. But in large startups, in all kind of startups, you might see that the bro culture and the star performers behave in their own way, and those kind of things might still be going on. And sometimes, as you see, recently there were a lot of lawsuits at your favorite ride-sharing company, where you saw that a lot of people were thrown out of the company because of the way they were treating employees. And these employees nowadays are not your old age employees, because as you know, women are becoming more and more conscious of their rights, and they refuse to take crap from people. And especially when they see that this company has got money, and there's a definitely hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe available if they go and take the right approach rather than putting up with the nonsense. So you will see that culture might be going through the shift of startups to the big companies kind of culture. So that is your that is I hope I have given you a bird's eye view of different kind of companies you might want to consider for employment, and each of them have their pros and cons. As you know, life is a trade-off. There are no free lunches, and so sometimes you have more money, but then you're working on the weekends and busting your ass, as they say in the United States. And on the other hand, sometimes you might be making less money, but then you have work-life balance. You don't have to go to work on the weekend. You might be able to pursue other interest in life. So those are all the trade-offs, and I hope I have given you a good summary of where you might want to focus your energies in life. So with that, I wish you all the best, and I hope this video will give you some idea of what kind of companies you should consider for employment. Adios. I will see you in the next video. Hopefully, we'll do some interesting problems, maybe related to one of these FANG companies interview. Or until then, goodbye, take care. Hasta mañana.